My name is Jody Peters. I'm the program manager for the Ecological Forecasting Initiative, which you'll also hear us say call EFI or EFI. And let me have a couple announcements that I wanted to share. So first, thank you all for participating. It's really great to see this group. And this is our series on conversations on diversity and data. This is our first panel that we're hosting, and we're going to be talking about what do diverse students need to thrive in data and computer-heavy settings. I will talk about a couple announcements, and I'll also go over Poll Everywhere with you. Poll Everywhere is what we're using to collect questions for our panelists. We'll also be sharing logistical information in the chat part of Zoom, but when we collect questions, we'll use Poll Everywhere, so I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. Mike Dietze is the director of EFI, and so he's going to give a brief overview about what EFI is doing. Diana Dalbotten is the chair for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group, so she'll give an overview of that group and introduce our panelists. And our panelists are Antoinette, Abeyta, Nievita, Bueno, and John Zobitz. So they'll share their insights with us, and then we'll have time for smaller breakout group discussions, and Sjodin will lead our Q&A session with our panelists. And then if you're able to stay past the hour, we'll have an additional 30 minutes for open discussion, but we also understand if you have to head out. So my first announcement is that we have our DAI working group is hosting a book club, and it will be starting in mid-December. We're going to be talking about Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And if you go to the EcoForecast DI website that's included here, and I think Jason was going to put that in the chat for us as well, you can get more details about that and how to sign up. And this is open to anyone who's interested in discussing this book. Our second announcement is that our next session in this series is going to be talking about what does culturally competent data science training look like. And for this, we have three panelists: Tracy Bibelnex from the University of Minnesota Duluth, Carrie Diaz-Eaton from Bates College, and Christian Trujillo, who is from Humboldt State. And they'll be talking on January 20th at 12 p.m. And so on our website, again, you can get more information about their bios and how to sign up for that. Okay, so I wanted to go over Poll Everywhere. This is how we'll be collecting our questions. If you guys would take a minute to go to a web browser or go on your phone, and you can just type in pollev.com/EFI2020. And when you get there, that should now be activated. And you'll see this question: what role do you play in preparing students for data-heavy careers? And so we're using this as a way to get you to Poll Everywhere, because once you are in this browser, when we change the form to get questions for our panelists, it will automatically pop up for you. And then it's also a nice way to get to know who's here in the group with us. So we have people that mentor students, and it's awesome. We see people who have made it to Poll Everywhere. If you see something that someone has entered that you do, just hit the thumbs up button and you can vote for that. So quite a few people that mentor students. We have faculty members, and we'll give a little bit more time just to make sure that everyone can get to that browser. All right, well, it looks like a lot of you have gotten to Poll Everywhere, which is great. And we have a lot of people that work with students in many different ways, which is really awesome. But I don't want to take up too much more time. So we're going to switch over and let Mike give an overview about EFI, and then move on to Diana.
Thanks, Jody. As Jody mentioned, I'm the director of EFI, the Ecological Forecasting Initiative, which is a grassroots research consortium that was launched about 2 years ago with the goal of building a community of practice in the area of ecological forecasting, with a particular focus on near-term iterative forecasts that are a way of providing information that is relevant to society and environmental decision-making in particular, while advancing the basic science in ecology. EFI is largely structured around its working groups, and today's panel is really exciting because I think it really is at the confluence of over half of those working groups. And most obviously our diversity, equity, and inclusion working group, but also the one focused on education. And then our technical working groups focused on methods and cyber infrastructure, as well as FE has a really great active graduate student association. Beyond those five, we also have working groups thinking about the ecological theory, building partnerships across academia, agencies, industry, NGOs, et cetera, and a social science working group, as well as five topical working groups focused on our five recently launched NEON forecasting challenge areas. If you haven't been involved with FE before, I encourage you to learn more. If you have, welcome back. I'm also going to apologize right now that I am currently missing a required NASA PI meeting, so I will jump off shortly, but I'm definitely going to catch this later tonight on video. So I hope you all have a great panel, and thanks, Diana, for organizing this.
Thanks, Mike. So as chairman, I guess Jody said, of the DEI committee or diversity committee, I welcome all of you. And I think that this is really a stealth way for us to build membership in that diversity committee. That's our main goal for putting on these panels, besides the information that our panelists can share, which I think is on a very crucial topic right now, critical topic, that of training students computationally and making sure that all students get adequately trained in that area. And so saying that is what I'm saying is I do hope that you want to be part of our diversity committee, our education committee, our partners committee, or one of the other committees. If you're interested in learning more about ecological forecasting, even if you don't exactly know what it is, you're still welcome to join us and help us broaden our voices and figure out how we can best meet the needs of all communities. So I'm just going to go on ahead and introduce Antoinette Abeyta from the University of New Mexico at Gallup, Nievita Bueno, who is from Humboldt State University, and John Zobitz, who's from our own Augsburg College here in Minnesota. Augsburg University now, I guess. Let's start with John, since you're up on top, and you can give us your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for that invitation. What I want to do is I want to start with a clip from the movie Hidden Figures, which details the stories of Black mathematicians at NASA in the 1960s. In this scene, the engineer Mary Jackson has to petition a judge to take classes so she can be recognized as an engineer at NASA. Let's watch the scene. I think a lot about that scene, especially when I think about my students and how we can help them thrive in computer and data heavy settings. Many of our students, they are the first. They may be the first in the family to go to college, first time taking a computer class at the university level. Like Mary Jackson, they have the skills and knowledge, but may face some added barriers that prevent them from achieving their success. These barriers can range from a variety of factors: institutional, financial, societal. They may view us faculty as the judge in the scene. So the question is, how do we build a community of support as a bridge so that they do not remain as hidden figures? Let's talk a little bit about Augsburg and its institutional context. You are looking at a picture of the entering 2019 class. The largest and the second diverse ever admitted. This year was even more so. We're located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in one of the most diverse zip codes in the Midwest. We're a small, private liberal arts college in the Lutheran tradition, but our students come from multiple faith traditions. We're small, but well known for welcoming students who may experience challenges at other universities. We are one of the first universities in the country with a residential program for students in recovery from drug and alcohol addictions. We welcome students with disabilities. Over the past decade, we have, due to institutional changes and practices, we've intentionally sought to diversify our student body. And we've had remarkable growth in BIPOC students over the past decade shown in this graph. On the department level, we're a combined department of mathematics, statistics, and computer science. And we graduate about 30 to 50 students, majors in mathematics or computer science each year, which makes us one of the larger majors on campus. This change has also made us think about the ways in which we welcome students so that we are student ready. As faculty, we want our students to love mathematics and computer science at a deep fundamental level. We want to create a climate where they are welcome for who they are. In particular, we want to make sure that they struggle with mathematics and computer science, not the climate that would prevent them from being successful. However, what our students say can be quite different, which is shown here. All of these statements could be microaggressions, which in the sum lead them to conclude that this major isn't for them or that they don't belong. What we need to do is to build a bridge to them for them to be successful. And I'm going to detail 3 ways in which we try to make that happen. The first is a focus on curriculum and pedagogy. All of our classes emphasize active and collaborative learning. Simply put, when I say less, the students learn more. Research studies show that active and collaborative learning has a net positive benefit for students and have shown to have disproportionately positive effects for students from traditionally underrepresented groups, with neutral to positive effects on majority students. To paraphrase a study, active and collaborative learning does not fix students, but rather fixes an inequitable course. It takes encouragement for students that it is okay to talk in class, and that, but they do find that having the ability to work and collaborate with each other builds community. Here you see pictures of a calculus class where students are working on problems at the board, tackling the concepts, drawing from each other's learning. I make sure to scaffold the instruction when doing so, especially in computing classes. In many cases, I try a rule of 3, meaning I do, we do, you do. This could mean showing just enough lecture and instruction on a concept, perhaps experimentation with a small data set, and then a larger, messier data set where they're given the chance to explore. The examples that we use are often built from the real world, topics that are timely, interesting to students, and perhaps even interesting to us as faculty. For example, when teaching data visualization course, students work with 2 data sets of police stop data in Minneapolis, along with the community census data for the backgrounds of the people in the neighborhood. Their task, explore both data sets and extract out any interesting patterns or trends that matter to them. Also, I make sure to provide feedback, frequent and encouraging. I know it can be extremely frustrating when code or computing doesn't work for an assignment. I've been there. I work to build multiple supports, provide frequent office hours and access to create an environment where it is okay not to know yet, but working together, I can empower you to do so. Especially for coding assignments or classes where there is that large support, I've moved from high-stake assessments to smaller projects with multiple instances and examples to keep them moving ahead, with plenty of time for them to work with me in the room over their shoulder so they don't feel adrift. Next is we work to build community. All Augsburg students are required to take a first-year seminar, and in our department, this is linked to our introductory classes. This seminar has university-required sessions on financial aid, registration, mental health, but there is a lot of latitude on individual choice that I can provide. We focus the seminar on inclusion in STEM, which in some aspects focus on developing a growth versus a fixed mindset and learning how to work through challenges. Data science and mathematics is so new, and mathematics is perhaps an odd major choice for some of these students and their families. And so we need to make sure that we provide examples for these students that you can make a living and make a life with a major in mathematics or computer science. So we focus on what it is like to envision a career. Students read profiles from several professional organizations that profile Black, Indigenous, people of color colleagues. And I'll post a link in the chat for some that I use. Seeing professionals that look like them or with similar life experiences is empowering, but that isn't all. I work to match up students with recent alumni that are 1 to 5 years out of graduation, working in a field that they're interested in for either a quick conversation or chat about their journey. Building those partnerships is so meaningful for students as they start their educational journey. In summary, the goal of this seminar is to emphasize to students that they belong, they matter. What we have found is that also by working on what just occurs in class, but also what happens outside of the classroom matters too. And so we aim to provide high quality learning experiences that layer on the work that they do in the classroom. Back when more students of color were enrolling and there perhaps only one or two in a section, my colleague, Dr. Rebecca DuPont, created a one-credit class called Calculus Workshop. The aim was to provide a space and community for these students. This is not remediation. In workshops, students work at the board on challenging homework problems, as well as discussing academic planning, learning about careers. One of these photos shows them heading out to visit the 3M engineering company. After the first year, we found that workshop participants had a higher retention and a GPA 0.6 points higher than those who did not participate in the workshop. Since this time, the workshop has brought in for more students. It was invite only, but we're seeing similar outcomes. We also know that several of our students are busy working 1, 2, or even 3 jobs to support their education and their families. This is a barrier preventing them from actually spending time doing the needed classwork. To that end, we've secured an NSF-funded STEM grant, which provides $10,000 scholarships to students that we award at the local level. Over a 7-year period with the 2 STEM grants, we supported 111 scholars, of whom 92 graduated in STEM and 18 are continuing in STEM, with the 99% retention. Of these scholars, 41% were transfer students. 5 of these students received graduate fellowships for their academic achievement, and 2 of these students began at community colleges and were NSF identified underrepresented minorities. In summary, to thrive in a computer and data heavy majors, a holistic approach is needed. I want to say that this is not just the work of one person, but of many. Here's an image of the mathematics, statistics, and computer science department who are all in and helping our students succeed. We didn't have a professional photograph, but this is a video that we sent to our graduates last spring to congratulate them. And it was the best that I could do in these COVID times. So thank you.
Thank you so much, John. That was very good. And I think we're going to move right on to Nievita because we want to leave lots of room for talking. And then Antoinette after Nievita.
Hi, so my name is Dr. Nievita Bueno, and I'm the director of the Indian Natural Resources Science and Engineering Program plus Diversity in STEM at Humboldt State University. So I am a first-generation American. I am the daughter of immigrant parents. Mi primera lengua estaba español. And when I was in high school, I was great in science, but not in biology. These are pictures of me when we were a kid. So we moved to Imperial Beach, California, when I was about 4 years old. And that's where I went through school. And that's the most southwesterly city in the United States. So it's on the Mexican border, which caused its own set of problems for somebody named Nievita that spoke no English. When they started school. When I was growing up, it was during the time when we were trying to join the space race. So all I ever wanted to be was an astronaut up until my senior year in high school when I realized that there were no women astronauts. And so I kind of gave up that dream. And when MIT sent me an application, my mother said, throw it in the trash. We don't have money for you to go to college. And so I did and didn't go. So fast forward, I'm a mother. I have 3 children. So that picture in the upper right is me with my oldest daughter a long time ago. And those are other family pictures. I worked at a high school for 18 years, working with learning disabled students. And I went to school at night to the community college for 6.5 years to prepare to get a teaching credential. I'm a first-generation college student. I had to quit my job so that I could continue and get my actual bachelor's degree in geology, moved to the University of Arizona. So I was in Central California, moved to Arizona, and there at the University of Arizona, I was cornered by the McNair Scholars Program representative, and they said, "We need you to get your doctorate degree." And I was like, "Ooh, not me, right? I'm like in my 40s. And they said, "No, there's no reason why you can't do it. Go get a research experience this summer. If you tell me and figure out if you like research and come back and talk to us." So I did that. So I ended up becoming a McNair Scholar. So I was the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree, the first to get a master's, and the first to get a PhD. I'm also a grandmother. So here's a picture of me in Iowa with two of my grandchildren and my mother, who, because I now have a PhD and now have more money, I'm able to take and have her live with us. So she is now living with us, which is something that I do share with my students who are very much concerned about what's going to happen with their parents. I'm also a great grandmother. So in July, one of my granddaughters had a grandchild, which I haven't got to meet yet. I also have a bachelor's degree in geoscience, a PhD in geoscience education, and I did a postdoc at Purdue University where I was affiliate faculty member. And this is a student, Daryl Reno, who I first met when I was a postdoc. He is now got his doctorate degree. I was on his committee, and he's out. He's a postdoc now at the University of Florida, Florida International University, looking for a job. And then I became director of academic programs at a National Science and Technology Center, which sunset a few years ago. So there's quite a few of them across the country. Oh my goodness. This did not happen earlier today. Sorry about that. There at the National Science and Technology Center, Wendy Smythe was one of our graduate students who has now gotten her doctorate degree and is working at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, and also is on the board of directors of ACES now. So we're very proud of Wendy. And these are my McNair Scholars. I also then, after that job, when that sunset, became a McNair Scholars Program Director myself before I took my current position at Humboldt State University. So why care? Why care about my background? So students from traditional and underrepresented groups, first generation students, those from low socioeconomic backgrounds, they need to be able to bring their whole selves to your programs. If they're expected to check their identities at the door outside your lab or your classroom, they're not going to succeed. And then others from communities they represent are not going to come to your program because they're going to talk to each other. So you need to develop relationships with your students so that they feel comfortable in talking to you. For example, yesterday, I got this email from a former student, unsolicited. So it starts out saying, "Hello, Dr. Watts. I hope this email finds you well. I'm just writing to see how you're doing. I hope all is well and that everyone at the Intercept House is healthy." And then at the end, he said, "Stay healthy. I really hope to see you at the other end of the COVID so I can hug you one last time and let you know how much you have changed me for the better in person." It's because we had a relationship that we developed, right? Another thing he said was, "I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity that you gave me. Within the span of a week, it felt like you not only allowed me to join the Intercept family, but also granted me money for research with almost nothing in return. Then you sent me out to a drop-dead gorgeous part of the earth for a seminar that I never knew so much I needed so much in my life." So I tried to start to think about, where did I send him? Well, it turns out that what it was I sent him to Sockness last year. And SOCNAS last year happened to be in Hawaii. So that's why it was a drop dead thing. But even more important, the seminar that I sent him to that was before the SOCNAS conference was on biogenetics in data modeling and biogenetics. So here in this picture, this is another SOCNAS conference, and the young lady in the middle, that her name is Sherry Watson. She was also a graduate student at CMOP, and she currently is on the job market as well. She got her doctorate and has done a AAAS fellowship and is now looking for a job. So opportunities, there are many opportunities that already exist for these students in STEM fields. There are minority serving organizations such as ACES, which is the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and SOCNAS, the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. And I strongly encourage any of you that can attend these conferences to do so that you can see what these students are all about. And meet with them and really talk to them. There are discipline-specific organizations. For example, I'm in geology, so there's GSA has a program called On to the Future, and the American Chemical Society has the ACS Scholars Program. I'm not familiar with data science and what they have, but I'm sure that there are similar programs as well, where you can both find students to recruit for graduate programs and also send your students for additional support. So one of the things you can also do if you don't have those programs is to develop your own. So this is something that Diana Dalbotten has developed in conjunction with several of the rest of us. Antoinette's also a member, as am I. And it's called the Geoscience Alliance, and it's an organization where we got together and individuals from all across the country work to mentor students that are in the academic pathways who are Native American, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian. And so it started as an idea in 2005, and since then we've had 4 conferences and are now working on our 5th. Research experiences are really key. So all the STEM students who want to go to graduate school, we all know, should engage in an REU. So if you can do something to develop an REU, that's good, or help to send students to REUs. You would be surprised in the program that I run how many students have never heard of research experiences for undergraduates. Here's one that I ran with my McNair scholars. And so here's the rest of the email. He got into CERM and is currently working in a lab at a medical center in Sacramento. And he says, I would not be here writing this to you on my way to a lab I once dreamed of working in if it wasn't for you. And it's not to be all about me, but just to show that one person can make a huge difference in the life of these students. So some of the things that you can do is to, at your own university, talk to your student support services people, learn what's available at university so that you can refer other students to them. So for undergrads, there are programs like LZAMP, which I run at my university, the Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. Many universities have that. McNair is a program that is specifically designed as part of the TRIO suite of programs to help undergraduates get ready to go into graduate programs. So if you're looking to recruit for a graduate program, look to LZAMP and McNair. If you can provide application fee waivers for those students, that's even better, because a lot of times they don't have the money to apply to programs. Possibly you could develop peer tutoring programs like the first gentleman, John, did. I thought that was an amazing example of things that could be done. Conference opportunities, of course, they don't have money to send themselves to conferences. So you need to have some funds that you can actually provide travel support for them to go to conferences and registration, and don't expect them to pay their own way and get reimbursed, because a lot of them, that's just not possible. Networks of support. And then here is one opportunity. I took my McNair scholars to, a workshop, and we saw Niagara Falls, and I made them go on the boat, even though they didn't want to. And you can create opportunities on your campuses, right? So there's the McNair Scholars Program. It's kind of hard to get, but it's worth going after. A First Generation Day was one of the things that I've done in the past, where you just celebrate those students who are first gen students and have a celebration for them. Here I had students do a panel, and actually the administrators at the university I was at thought that this was very valuable to hear right from the first generation students' mouths what they need and what their experiences were like. And so relationships are key. There's no progress that's going to be made, no pathways that are going to be built, no students from communities will come to your program without trust. You have to develop trust relationships with your partners on a personal level, and these relationships will take time. So it takes a commitment from you to do these things. Okay, many times we know that retention in STEM, these students are the only ones in their class or department. So having a place in the community that they can come to and gather is imperative. And one of the places that you can focus on is these key courses that are gatekeepers and keep students out of the discipline. Identify the courses, monitor the students carefully, and employ tutors and seek to remove those barriers. And what is it that's making the students leave your field if they're there? You know, how do you get them in? My philosophy of mentoring is my students are precious to me, but they're also independent people with lives and paths of their own. So I strive to open doors, windows, and minds and help them see possibilities which exist, but ultimately they have to choose their own pathways. But I still expect them to keep in touch with me after they graduate. And there's my graduating class of 2019, my Intercept scholars. I will conclude there.
Antoinette, you go ahead.
I did not prepare a PowerPoint, so I just going to talk.
That's cool. Go talk.
So my name is Antoinette Abeyta. I am an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico, Gallup. A little bit about myself. I'm a first generation college student. My mother was a high school dropout. My grandmother dropped out of school in the 8th grade. My great-grandmother was illiterate. So being the first one in my family to get a PhD is really quite something. I come from a background where, and I look at where I'm at today, it feels surreal. And it was through the help of a lot of directed help and programs. And that's something that I wanted to do and reflect on my career, is to work with people who had a similar background like me, who statistically it's not in our odds to succeed. So that's where I'm at. And I'm here at the University of New Mexico, Gallup. It's a 2-year community college. We're in the Four Corners region. We primarily serve an indigenous population. 79% of our students are Native American and 9% of our students are Latinx. So we're a minority majority institution. We primarily serve the Navajo Nation, or the Diné people, and the Zuni Pueblo. A little bit about our students, because the majority of our students live on the reservation. Just a little bit about the Navajo Nation, which is one of the largest Indian reservations in the country. 10% of the homes in that area do not have electricity. 40% of those do not have running water. And 60% of those homes do not have access to internet or even mobile data. And so these are some of the challenges that many of our students face. Within our county, 33% of our county is at or below the poverty level. And 75% of our students at the UNM Gallup campus are Pell Grant eligible or considered economically at risk. And 37% are low income, as well as first generation as well. So when we look at the students that we have students who are facing significant barriers that many of their other peers do not face. And when we look at data intensive programs or research, at least incorporating or introducing the curriculum, we have to be aware and sensitive to those barriers through here. Because if you immediately start students with like, let's start programming in R, they're going to immediately shut down. So we have to meet students where they are within the system, because they may not have had exposure or even access to some of the technologies that are needed to be successful in a data intensive and science career. So in order to do that, we have to provide resources for students to first access those materials. And that can be even things as simple as like a data hotspot or access to a laptop. Most of our students that we have, the only computer device that they have is a mobile phone. So you have to consider where they're at in that point. In order to get students start engaged in data analysis, we have to start small with the basic fundamental knowledges and skill sets, even things of like, this is how a spreadsheet looks. These are the rows and the columns. So starting from those fundamental points. And while some may think for students who have that exposure, it's redundant or boring, but all students benefit from that very fundamental knowledge and assessment, because we can all learn something new when we build those basic knowledges through here. Data assessment has to be incremental and scaffolded. So slowly building on. Start with, how do you read a graph? How do you put data into a table? How do you then turn that into a graph? How do you interpret that? So slowly building on, and then from there, you can start building on more detailed analysis here. And this is just in the instructional level. Data analysis has to be culturally relevant and culturally sensitive. Students are most engaged about issues that they care about and are reflective of their communities and themselves. So we have to make sure that the data is culturally sensitive and culturally aware to their needs. And we also want to show that students' values and concerns are reflected in the data and the data collection process. When we talk about what students need for training, it has to be tailored specifically to their needs, addressing the financial, familial, and cultural obligations and barriers they may face through here. One of the things that I do to provide research experiences for students is to create research experiences for undergraduates that can be done at their home institutions, building on digital data analysis so that they can still meet their family and cultural obligations and not have the financial strain of having to relocate as well. Our programs have been very successful in increasing diversity. Our remote research opportunities have 54 in the geosciences, I'm in the geosciences, I should say, 54% female, which is double the rate of representation of females in the earth sciences, and 34% of historically excluded minority and ethnic backgrounds, which is over 5 times the rate of representation in the geosciences. So when we design our data analysis with students' needs in mind, we can make very profound impacts on their career paths and also address and have them be successful in data analysis and data intensive research.
Thank you, all three of you.
Let's get started. There's quite a few up here, and it looks like 5 people have thumbs up to the question. You mentioned that many of your students don't have access to computers. How do you overcome this barrier? And Antoinette, would you be willing to start with that one? Because I believe that was something that you specifically mentioned.
So I, as an individual, cannot fix societal inequities. Darn. But one of the things is that I had to, like, especially because we had to move to remote online education in the spring semester and now for the fall and the upcoming semester, is we have to be very cognizant of how we design these activities. So, you know, I offer all my lectures in like 4 different formats. So there's audio only, just PowerPoint, you know, make it so that it's downloadable. We work with our library so students can access hotspots. They can check out things like mobile devices, electronic battery packs, things like that. We even put all the lecture material on USB drives so students could, you know, they don't have to spend their bandwidth on downloading material or have to go, you know, sit in a McDonald's parking lot or things like that. So just being aware of like, what is the cost of participation for your students? Like, what would it take for them to participate with that, and kind of working around it, being aware of those issues. So like, I'm not going to ask my students to stream in, you know, a 2-hour video that would be intensive on their data as well as their battery lives. So like being aware of that and designing, you know, the assignments and work around those challenges.
I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, John and Nievita, please feel free to pop in, or all the panelists or others as well. So this is definitely open for discussion.
And I agree. And I think I had to give up a lot of sort of that expectation that, you know, students would be sharing their screens or their monitors with me, right? Because they don't have the bandwidth or the access, or they don't want to share their space with everyone, right? And just being comfortable with that and knowing that how I design sort of activities and assessments, that they can still access them and get some educational benefit from them, you know, even if they're not maybe engaging with it the way that I had envisioned it, but trying to find ways that they can still get more benefit from that.
A similar question asked about suggestions for doing and teaching data science on mobile devices. Have any of you done that? I know, Antoinette, you mentioned thinking about battery life of their phone and how much data streaming, but do you have anything else to add, or any of the others that are specific about working with a mobile device?
A lot of mobile, like online learning platforms that people use, like Learn and Blackboard Learn and Canvas, they allow you to preview what it looks like on a mobile device. So if you haven't done that, like that's the first thing I would recommend, is just to take a look at what it looks like. Is it accessible? That's a big thing. And then what I do, because I know a lot of my students work off cell phones, is that I've done Excel demonstrations in like a PC environment, like a computer environment, as well as what it looks like in a cell phone environment, kind of talking through like, this is where you will find this button at, because it's not in the same spot through here. And then there's a lot of really great apps out there that allow mobile interface that is easy to use. So taking advantage of those things that are, you don't have to recreate the whole wheel. Like there's a lot of stuff that's already out there that's really neat.
Awesome, thank you. I feel like we should be compiling all of these things and making sure we have all the resources available for everyone. Another question, what strategies do you use for scaffolded instruction? And what does scaffolded instruction mean a little bit more in detail?
So I can address that in terms of how we teach our calculus class. Our class is 70 minutes, but I split it off into 3 20-minute segments. So yes, 20 plus 20 plus 20 is 70. And the first part is where students come in and they just do an activity, like, and it's based upon an example in the real world, like real data if possible. And, you know, they may not know, like if it's on the chain rule, for example, like that's the topic for today. And so this gets them into the activity, you know, and it doesn't assume that they necessarily read up on it beforehand, but just start thinking about mathematics in that way, or mathematics and data. The next 20 minutes is what I call a just enough lecture, right? I don't show them 20 different examples of how to do this, but just enough for them to see how this process works, of the topic, and just that if they could walk out of class that they would at least see 1 or 2 ways that they can build upon it. And then the last 20 minutes is when they're at the board, solving problems, working with somebody in the class. I usually rotate around the class, helping students one-on-one. And that's where they're really putting into practice the skills that they learned. So it's sort of like this 3-part stage where they kind of learn about it, see some examples from me, and then they put it into practice working collaboratively.
Cool. Let's go to a question, and I'm gonna give this one specifically to Nievita, but the others can feel free to chime in, of course. What cultural barriers might prevent students from math and computer science courses, or geoscience courses, chemistry courses, these kinds of more data-heavy courses?
So one of the things that I found is that the students need to be able to see, like John was talking about, how does this lead to employment? Their families are not going to let them go down that path unless they see a job at the end of it. And so that is a huge barrier. Parents know about doctors, medical doctors, they know about, those other sorts of people or professions that they see every day, but they don't have concepts of how you can get paid to work with math, or how you can get paid, unless it's taxes, right? Or how you can get paid to, dig in the dirt, or these other things, unless it's, picking vegetables or some other thing that's I'm just being very stereotypical right here. But I hear this all the time. Their parents are all the time trying to say, well, do something, that when are you going to come back and do some work, right? So they're really being pulled back. So you have to, one of the first things that I always do is make them start trying to think about, where am I going with this degree? What is it, if you could do anything you wanted in the world, what is it that you would like to do? And most of the times they haven't even thought about it. Like, what problem would you like to solve? And then start building a pathway on how to get there and what level of education are you going to need to get there. So you have to make them start looking beyond the bachelor's degree and onto what is going to happen after that.
Awesome. Thank you. We have reached the end of our hour. Sorry, Jason, I know you just raised your hand. But I wanted to make sure that we let those go who needed to go, and let the others know that we have an additional half an hour for questions, and to remind everyone that this is recorded so you can come back and find these resources. And I'll pass it to Jody or to Jason if you really, I saw you raise your hand, so if you really needed to add something. Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing you just said. So thanks everyone, and anyone who could stick around.
Yeah. And apologies that we didn't get to all the questions, but there were a lot and they were awesome.
And I'm planning, we've got the recording for this and we've got the questions, and we'll see for some of the questions that we didn't get to, for the bandwidth of our panelists, if they would be comfortable taking some time to fill those out. But panelists, if you don't have time, we understand as well. But we'll make everything available that we can from this.
So while we're waiting and to move into our next phase, which is our half hour of time to chat, I wanted to again remind people that the diversity committee for FE meets every month, and the education committee meets every month, and the partnership committee as well. I'm on all three, so I have 3 meetings a month, which is about 3 hours a month. It's not a big commitment, but it sure does add up to a lot of effort. So a lot of things we've been working on right now are strategic planning. How can the FE community promote diversity within our own ranks? This seminar series here, and other things, getting ready for AGU and some other things. So I invite you to please contact Jody if you want to be on our committees. Get invited. John's on the committee. I am, Jason, Jody, and we'd welcome you. It's not a scary thing, and it's not a big commitment. Okay, Jody, take it away.
Yeah, and as far as if you want to get involved, we have the FE Listserv, which we send out high-level newsletters, and you can sign up for that on the ecoforecast.org website. And then, yeah, you can email ecoforecast.initiative@gmail.com, which is on our website, and those emails go to me, and so I will respond, and I can help get you put in touch with any of the working groups that you may be interested in. We also have a Slack channel, a Slack group with a number of different channels, and if you just want to hang out and see what the different groups are doing, you can feel free, we can put you in touch with that, get you connected to that Slack group, and you can explore those different channels. So those are the big announcements, but we have about 30 more minutes for additional conversations. We could keep going with some of the questions on the Q&A, or if anyone has other ideas of how to structure that. we can do something different. But since we have a number of questions, that might be nice to keep going.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing that, and that way we have a recorded response for those that weren't able to stay. There were a lot of them for Antoinette. So do you want me to continue facilitating, or should we just, like, can everyone see the questions?
Let's see. We can. I can share my screen and I think show all those questions. You'll just have to bear with me a moment.
And anybody who's on, we welcome your input on any of the questions as well.
Absolutely.
So even though they might all be for Antoinette, it's like, Antoinette, yeah, you got a lot of questions. But anybody can share your thoughts. Panelists and non-panelists alike.
Can I just add something to Nievita's answer about cultural barriers? She is so right about, like, parents not wanting their kids going to a place where, like, they don't know or have any idea of those career outcomes. I remember when I went to grad school, my mom was so pissed off at me that I wasn't getting a job because she thought all I did was play in the sand. Like, she thought I was playing all day. And so, like, just having that, she was really pissed. She was like, Dios míos, mijita, just not having that awareness or any relationship to those fields can be a huge barrier. So even just finding another person from the same background in your field can be so powerful for connecting your students to those sort of career paths.
I wonder, on that subject, hey, this is Jason. Nice to see you guys. I wonder on that subject if there's a way that we could do some outreach to parents too in different disciplines, right? Because maybe if they met someone who is a successful researcher, or so maybe we have it sort of depends if you might be hard to reach the parents if they're far away or busy or something, but I wonder if there might be some things we could think about to help give those guys a concrete sense of what the careers are like.
And one of the things we do at our GADA camps is invite the parents to come on the last day and listen in on the presentations. So as much as you can do to make sure parents are invited when the students, undergrads, high school or whatever, are celebrating or presenting, I think that gives them the excitement about it. And we noticed that in the RU this summer, where parents had a chance to see their students interacting and they were proud, so it's one thing.
I was just going to chime in because I'm a teacher with that group, that an additional thing we've been doing is having former students come back who have careers in STEM fields, talk about their job and the things they did for their pathway to where they've gotten, and that's been a really good way to show the students a particular pathway and what can be done with a STEM degree.
Jen, have you noticed this with the Somali community in Minnesota? Is John still on?
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm still on. Yes, right. And like, especially, I think it's really important when, like, at the end of the summer, when we have our on-campus research, right, we make sure the talks are open to the public, right? Parents, kids come, right? So many of our students have younger siblings who are in, like just like 7, 8, 9, right? And being okay with them, with having sort of a different sort of research symposium than what maybe you might have had when I was an undergraduate, right? So, and it's a little more lively, more celebratory, and it's a lot of fun, right? So, especially like for the Somali community, we have a lot of Latinx students. Their families come to any sort of celebration of these students, and it's always good to see them and we tried to provide translations for them too, right? So they, if they don't necessarily speak English as their first language, right? They still want to hear about their students in Somali or Spanish, and I think that goes a long way too.
How does this translate for students that may not have parents or family in the picture or a strong relationship with them, but still need that support? And like, where do you go for some of those students that, or maybe are just farther away from their parents or their family, or have left a not a supportive situation?
So when students come into my program, when I take them into like the LSAM program, I always tell them that it's with the agreement that I'm going to be in their business, and I'm like the auntie that they didn't know that they needed, or the grandma, depending on the culture, and they're always fine with that. They're like, oh, okay, I think I need that. So it's back down to that personal relationship thing. I tell them, I'm going to be in your business. I'm going to ask you why you didn't do well in that class. But then I also want you to tell me when your grandma's sick or something happened to your uncle that you need to go take care of. So there's responsibility on your side as well, right? To be able to then be the go-between between that student and maybe a faculty member that might not understand, or help them navigate the system on how to, mitigate those situations, because stuff happens all the time, particularly with these students. They're always being called back home for something. They're working an extra job because they don't want their younger brother to suffer. They're sending money back home. There's all kinds of stuff in these kids' lives. And, you're the person that they're going to be coming to then. So it's a two-way street, but that's what I do. I say, I'm going to be in your business, but then I'm here too. If you need me, just email me.
Thank you for saying that, because I think that's really important. A lot of the students I work with that are, underrepresented, they just don't look like anybody else at UMD up here in Duluth, Minnesota. One of the things that they're trying so hard, they're engaged, they want to be successful, but they have no idea how to advocate for themselves, and they don't know when they should advocate for themselves. It's just a foreign thing for them. They just accept what comes to them. Oh, this happened to me, I guess I just accept it. And I think through that mentoring, through taking that personal interest in those students, you can help them learn. You are important. This is valued. This is when you advocate for yourself. I mean, being very intentional about that mentoring, not just to get them through the challenges and get them through the course and get them to the end where they can say, wow, I did succeed, but building those critical skills that underlie all of our success, underlie any student's success. And those students who are working so hard, I think sometimes have the hardest time reaching out and advocating, and just to have somebody reach them and pull them in. I've just seen it transform lives. So thank you for saying that.
And anybody can do it. It's not just, you don't have to be a diversity worker. All you need, it just takes one person to just care enough.
Hi, thank you so much for this great conversation. My name is Christine. I'm at Rutgers University. I have a question about building relationships. We work with some undergrads, but we also work with middle school and high school kids. You guys have done so well in building relationships. What have you found works in building these relationships when we're all learning remotely over Zoom? I'm really hoping someone has a great tip to pass along, because I think we all know how important that is, and it's been so challenging to get to know kids over the internet.
That's been really hard for our program, because we actually have a house on campus with like a computer lab and a kitchen and things like that the students come to, and that's what they're used to. but it's really hard. They're not even showing up for appointments now, right? So they're forgetting, they don't even know what day it is or what time it is. But when they do show up and we do finally get to connect, then they're really happy to see us, right? When we finally do talk to them, they're like, oh, thank you, you know, for checking in on me. So we try to check in on our students at least once every semester. You know, we'd like to do it more often than that, but we have 168 students on our caseload. So, you know, and then what happens is, as you know, if students don't show up for their appointments, and that's, you know, a half hour or an hour that you've wasted, that you haven't been able to see someone else either, because you put that time aside. So I don't have a magic answer for that. We're running like seminars, and we're running all kinds of activities, and no one's showing up. So
one of the things I think, and we tried it in our RU this summer, and I think we're trying to with Godot too, is think about something beyond just like the seminar or the science or the lecture or whatever, but giving students a chance to talk to each other in a casual setting, and a chance to talk about themselves and what they're interested in. Or in the case of our Godot camps, we're going to be doing a storytelling situation to try to get our campers to come to camp, even though remotely. I work with Rachel on that project. But I mean, the idea is, even for faculty, I've had a lot of faculty say, who are newer, younger faculty, I have a lot of opportunities to like go to my department meeting, but none of those water cooler meetings where you just talk. And so maybe we need to figure out more ways for informal interaction.
I was going to second that, Christine, especially as you're thinking about middle school kids or younger kids. I think, especially now that we're all on Zoom for so much, but finding fun ways to get together. We had a lab meeting with our undergrads a couple weeks ago where we just had a trivia time. And I know, like, for my kids that are in elementary school, when their teachers have like the games, you know, they'll play Kahoot or they'll do some kind of game. And then once they do that, then they'll pay attention better after having been able to do that. And they're more excited to go back to class. So if there's, I think it, like Diana was saying, if there's a way that we can find a way to have fun on the screen.
And casual interaction where people just can talk. Yeah. Antoinette, did you have something? You look like you have thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm fully remote this semester, and I think I've had like 2 people stop by my Zoom office hours. So, which is, I understand, very typical. But as a suggestion from one of my students, I opened a Snapchat account, and I get so many questions and responses through there and through text. So like using the mediums that students use is a great way to engage with them. Like a lot of my students even are engaged in material. They're like, oh, I found this meme. I thought you'd be funny because it related to class material. So, you know, engage students with the way that they talk and communicate.
I just want, this is Jason again. I just wanted to say some specific things about Diana's RU, because I helped instruct on that RU, and I thought what she said was really effective. What she said really worked. But to me, one of the key ingredients was that it was like part of the curriculum. It wasn't like an extra fun thing, because if someone's really busy or checked out, that's not gonna, you know, they're not gonna have time for, you know, a fun thing, right? But it was like it was really ingrained in the curriculum, and there were sort of assignments, right? So like they somehow got them all GoPro cameras, and they were all like they had to make videos about something in their life and then show them, and it was really great. For instance, for me as an instructor sitting at this desk that I've been sitting at for the last 9 months, I got to see these kids out in California and all over the world doing cool stuff and showing me cool stuff. So I felt like I got to know them a little better, and they did it because it was part of the course. You know, they had to do it. And then that basically blurred the lines a little bit between the sort of formal school stuff and we're a team working on this together. So I thought that was like a really brilliant way of having that, making sure that sort of personal, emotional connection was part of the training and not like an extra thing. I think that's
Yeah, what he's saying is we required it. We required sharing days, yes.
And story maps.
And story maps and a lot of things. But the point is to try to enforce time when you just make the students talk to each other. And I love breakout groups for that too, because you just make them talk to each other. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Anna, do we have more questions to talk about?
Yeah, can we pick on Antoinette?
Yeah.
Antoinette, would you tell us more about your remote geoscience research program?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, majority of our students are Indigenous, and there's a lot of cultural obligations that happen during the summertime, especially right before the fall. So in order to accommodate that, like relocating out of for 2 months can be a barrier. So, and we looked at the skills that a lot of students need to be successful in the geosciences, and a lot of them were digital data analysis, like mapping, programming, and there's a lot of data that's already publicly available. So we designed the REU so that they could do these sorts of research experiences within their home community. They used the campus as their main source that could address the data inequity issue. So they had access to computers and lab space, workspace. So they had, pre-COVID, this was really ideal because they could still go home and, manage their family sheep flock and still, get engaged in research. And we think that by allowing these very flexible opportunities, that they may be more willing to take a more engaging and more in-depth research experience in the future. So it allows them to explore their interests in STEM without a huge significant investment with them. And it's, it supports the students in the way that they need to be supported at that time.
How long of a program was it?
2 months, so the same length as the standard REU program. It's just it was done in their home community, and it's a great way to connect with students and build that relationship. They're more likely to come to your university or engage in your program if they already have an established relationship, and that you're also aware of their challenges and barriers, and you're willing to support them in light of those challenges and barriers.
So I think another question that came up is kind of skirting some of these things that you've already said, and it was specifically targeted at Antoinette, but I think that everyone can chime in. And the question was, can you talk a bit more about what you mean by data analysis should be culturally relevant? And so how do we make data analysis culturally relevant? Do we look at the analyses level or using specific kind of data, and where is that intersection between and data science, data analysis?
So what I would say is, these students that I work with, they want to give back to their communities. So what data are you analyzing? Is it something that's going to help somebody that they know sometime in the future? That's a way that you can, what is the project? Start from the project design, make it something that's going to help somebody that they know, that's going to work for their communities. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think John's example was exactly a bold example, given everything that's happened in Minnesota this year, but to actually analyze police data and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and all the data that I use is open source data, right? So there's power in showing them that, yeah, here it's on this website, it's Open Data Minneapolis, right? So you can go in and analyze it. You can take it from the website to your, to R, to clean it up, to visualize it. And that was all you, right? It wasn't me. So I think there's power in the process too, and to show them that they can do it. And but yeah, I try to find ways and examples that I think would appeal to what they're interested in. And I asked them, what are you interested in too, right? So, I mean, I think just even asking them that question, then you may get really broad answers that you can kind of focus down. But at least it starts somewhere.
Even having a discussion of like, because there is this perception in the sciences that data is apolitical or atypical. It's kind of devoid of, bias and things like that. But even acknowledging like how data is collected could imbue bias, and how data is analyzed can imbue bias. Like an example is like, if you look at long-term epidemiological data, Native Americans weren't considered part of the epidemiological, like a category. So, and that's erasure there. And so you really can't make like long-term predictions about that, or even like access to data. Like a lot of sovereign nations and tribal land control their own data. It's a question of like, do they want that data publicly analyzed? So starting from like even that basic conversation of like what data is and how you obtain it ethically. And then like Nievita said, like design with community in mind. Like what does the community want? What does the community need? Don't tell a community what it should or should not want to study, but ask and respond.
Awesome. These are great ideas. I know we've talked quite a bit in the DEI group about questions about urban ecology and accessing some of the students that may not, see hardcore field ecology type stuff as something that they're interested in. But I think sometimes that's like the polar opposite of looking at some of the more rural communities and seeing what they need. So we've got some questions or some ideas here about talking to the students and seeing what they're interested in and that kind of stuff. So thank you so much.
So from the ecological forecasting side, can I ask you, can you guys think about the cultural relevance of ecological forecasting, and how do you convey that idea to the broader communities?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. I talked about this a little bit with your students on the RU. The idea that you can, when people take some forecasts very, they just expect them, weather forecast. But a lot of problems or a lot of challenges aren't framed in that way, but I think they could be. And so it's a question about, sort of what's important for you as you try to make decisions, or what's important to your community as you try to make decisions. And is there a way that data could help? I think that sort of ties into some of what Antoinette was saying about getting people to think about data, its availability, how it's used, and then there is a question of inequity in the distribution of data, because we, for instance, we had a student who wanted to look at some climate data from the Dene reservation, and there was like no data from there because it was a place that was overlooked in the collection of data, and so that led to questions about environmental justice and things like that. But yeah, I think that, right. I think that starting with the conversations of asking people what they're interested in, but then turning that to a question about like, what kinds of things do you personally, or do people in your community want to make decisions about, and how could some more information help make those decisions would be the way to go. We're starting to work with some land managers around the Midwest on questions like this. So we're hoping that will be an example from our lab.
Diana, can you repeat your question?
Well, I guess I'm looking at like, how did the world of the scientists in the Ecological Forecasting Initiative, how can it come together with the world we've been hearing about today of students in Nievita and Antoinette and John's universities, and their communities, the communities that those students belong to? How do those two worlds intersect so that the forecasting can start to impact the questions of those communities? We seem to be worlds apart.
I really have enjoyed this conversation and learning from Antoinette and Nievita and John. And I think that's part of it, is getting to know different communities so we know what questions that they're asking. Because I think for the people that are doing forecasts right now, it's because they're working on a topic that they're interested in. And so they're making forecasts because it's a topic that they know or that they're studying. But if they don't know what other people are interested in or what are important questions to other communities, then I don't know if we'll have people who have the forecasting skills be able to transition and make those forecasts for other questions. So I think thinking about this in another way of how do we bring those two communities together, like you're saying, Diana. But just
that's what I've been thinking about ever since I met you guys, is kind of like, you know, how do we get people in FE who aren't just the model builders or predictors, but are the people who understand what the questions are?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about forecasting in principle, is that, well, it will take some modelers and some computer science. And in fact, it's sort of a heavy lift on some of the integration. But it also requires a whole lot of local knowledge and a whole bunch of information about the decision making and about the kind of data that could be included and things like that. So I do think that that the nice thing about it is that the team science aspect of it would embrace diversity and a diverse perspective and allow people to fit in a way that is most interesting to them. But yeah, I think it'll take a couple of concrete examples that really work through, and like everybody's saying, that sort of builds the trust and build the community, and then people come back and people know each other, so that sort of builds up. And then the other thing that FE is working on that could be helpful is to have is to try to minimize some of the technical barriers by automating a lot of that stuff, and so you don't have to, write your own Kalman filter. You can that's available for you.
Could you just give me an example of one or two things that your community is working on? Because I really don't know.
Yeah, so there's a couple of there's a couple of things that could be a connection. The first one is that we have so there's a NSF Research Coordination Network that Quinn Thomas at Virginia Tech is the lead on, but there's a bunch of us involved in it. And the idea of that, one of the main parts of that is to have there's a challenge where people are challenged to make a forecast about environmental change from data from this big network of NEON sites. So that's going to be the opposite of what we're talking about. That's like distant stuff and something that doesn't bubble up from the community, but sort of like, here's a convenient data set. Mm-hmm. And so from that side of it, it doesn't tie in very well. But on the other hand, there's a bunch of teams who are trying to make a forecast, and Alyssa, who's on this call, and I are working to try to get each of the people working on their challenge to try to come up with a component of that is focused on education and focused on filling some gaps. So in principle, if you were teaching a class in ecology or teaching a class on math or computers or statistics or any of the fields that are relevant, there would be a whole set of tools that would be available that you could integrate into a classroom, or if you were sort of independently interested or something. We're trying to lower the barriers by making a bunch of tools available online and to try to help in that way. So that's one version. But I think the other thing is to to make some personal connections with people who are have the typical any questions that would require some planning and decision making, right? So it could be environmental, health. It could be disease. Could be
So some of the ones that I've been most intrigued by thinking about Native communities is there was one on wasting disease in deer that somebody was doing, deer populations. Others related to fish populations. There's also people who are forecasting harmful algal blooms in lakes, which has a direct correlation to a lot of communities. Those are some of the ones I remember that are really just like community problems that can be forecast,
Yeah, and for us, we're just now. So I'm firmly ensconced in the ivory tower, but I'm trying to poke my head out and get to know what people in the real world are doing, and so we do all this, sort of historical forest management stuff, and that turns out to be something that's interested in to a lot of land managers. A lot of rural people, a lot of rural economies depend on natural resources. So we've been starting to try to build a network and get connected with those guys, because I think once you start being useful to people, if you can show that you're providing something that makes the decision easier, then people will trust you and go back.
From the RU this summer, the ones I think of in your group is the one related to the salmon.
Right.
Is definitely something that could be forecast, I think.
Yeah, they have really great data.
The Monoman project, certainly the Wild Rice project, is amenable to a forecasting approach.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of the others, but those two specifically.
I was just wondering what kind of data they were working with, like what kind of questions. Like, I don't even know. Is it like
atmosphere? So that's some examples of some of those.
Plants? Is it animals? Is it weather?
Could be anything. It's all of the above, Nievita. The basic idea is that when you want to make a decision, when you have a decision that you have to make, and it could be about what to do about air quality or what to do about salmon returns in Northern California. There's a lot of the ways people make those decisions. They have often they have some data and they analyze it, and then they sort of are wise and they understand the system, and they're like, okay, I think this would be a good choice. The idea for forecasting is that you would sort of take the data and use a model to sort of predict what would happen with those choices that sort of constrained by the data. And so that way you can say, well, what would happen if we did this versus that? It's or what, given what we've seen in the salmon populations in those rivers in Northern California, what's the trajectory now, and how would the trajectory change if we made some decisions? So that's sort of the idea. So it could be about anything. And in fact, we have people on all sorts of disciplinary problems. It does tend to be a lot of like sort of modeling and require the right amount of data. So some things would be a great forecasting problem, but you're like, their data are pretty sparse, so they're not going to constrain it very much. So it tends to
sounds a lot to me like what Antoinette was doing as a grad student, anyway, at St. Anthony Falls lab. Quantifying and predicting maybe what would happen in the Delta. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I right? You like?
I don't know.
That's logical. It's geological.
I think what I was doing was we had a plethora of data, but it's how do you put it in context of like global situations? Because we had laboratory experiments that we can make generalizations on, but it was like a lot of people questioned the validity of it because it wasn't, happening in nature, even though our lab experience is nature within itself.
That is an important and often correct assessment of forecasts, right, is that you're depending on the model. The model will be unrealistic. I mean, just look at this last election, right? Everyone had these forecast models of election, or COVID, right? Here's what's going to happen with COVID. Same thing, right? We're making a projection based on data, and we could be wrong because the data are biased. We could be wrong because our model has some assumptions in it that aren't right. And in fact, in reality, that's always the case, and you learn from it. But on the other hand, you don't want to lead people into the belief that that this is going to be some super useful thing. Then they get let down when it doesn't work, and then they're like never going back, because really it is a sort of learning cycle. So I think it helps to not overpromise too.
But also, we're working on how to diversify this gigantic community, and that's where, even if you don't feel like a modeler or an ecological forecaster, your participation in the group would be highly appreciated